So, if you read any bit of history about the late 60s, you'll see a lot of stupid shit about this one culture of people called the hippies. What were they up to? Anti-war protests, screwing over Los Angeles, being addicted to crack. What were these people all about? I mean, one of them just so happens to be Charles Manson, who ended up in San Francisco and became responsible for the psychological manipulation of several people who would later commit murders in his name. But this movement is even scarier when you look at the average person. Most of them were just a bunch of kids who had an obsession with these bullshit political concepts, which makes sense. I mean, most kids don't know much about politics, so a movement dominated completely by young people is going to get screwed over. The hippie movement is all about hating the military. There were many groups of diverse hippies who had their own views on the military, but they always pandered to the stereotypical far left idea. These are the type of people who would go out of their way to say, "I don't give a damn about Uncle Sam." Because that's all they knew. That's what's been force-fed into their heads. This is the mentality that these people have. Can you really think of anything good that they did? What was going on in 1968 that really had this happen? The 68 generation is what some of them are called. Did the hippie movement really make America better or worse? Like everything important that humans have ever done, there's a good and a bad. I would argue that the drug culture has always been prevalent. It was just more underground in the other half of the 1900s. So the hippies did make it a little bit more popular than it already was. However, more social change occurred in the 60s. And it's pretty remarkable when 400,000 people gather at some concert with no real security, and no one is killed or injured, especially with the enormous quantities of drugs present. Well, actually, there was probably tons of people that died from these drug overdoses, except the lefty media doesn't want to let you know about it. The social attitudes in what was acceptable and unacceptable changed, and these people probably became the politically correct snobs that you see today now that they're growing up. So when you see those hippies out there that are now older and owning our government, you know where they originally came from. It's beyond obvious where these people came from. They came from this destructive movement of white crackheads and maybe some African Americans out there. Mostly they were, unfortunately, a bunch of really stupid white people who were really weak and insecure about themselves and thought that crack, cocaine, and heroin is going to solve their problems. These people gathered all over California. You'll see tons and tons of useless, homeless hippies in California. And you can see that this ideology that they had clearly wasn't working out. They might preach peace, but they create destruction. That is the issue with the hippie movement. And I want you to research more about this movement, because these people are now running our streets in the Occupy Wall Street movement with their predecessor, the hipsters.